So we're back. We're back, and it's COMP305, and it's week 8. Can you believe it? Lesson 8, part 1. Last week we kind of did this this thing where we started off this first-person shooter game, right? And I want to kind of continue some of that with some additions. So this morning's class, I promised them that we would do more of that. So first thing I'd like you to do is, first of all, let's take a look and see what the project looks like right now. So I'm going to bring up Unity, because we already have kind of a project that we're working with. And if I'm not wrong, it's I think I've called it FPS demo for section 1. But what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to restart the project for you guys just really quickly so we can kind of be on the same page as everybody else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a new project. That's going to be a 3D project, and it's going to be FPS demo, right, for section 1, right? Here's the project. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to work in Blender. I want to create some assets with you guys, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to bring those assets back into Unity. But we're going to do this in the way that we're going to have everything we need to start off with a level. And what I want to do is I want to prepare, because I want to think about how can we create a procedurally generated level, right, 3D, as opposed to something we do that's fixed. So something that's a random level in 3D that gets generated. Now you might think, holy crap, that was hard enough to do in 2D. How the hell are we going to do it in 3D? You'll see. Okay. So first things first, let's prepare our scene. And what I'd like to try and do is get rid of some stuff. So one is I want to get rid of my directional light. Sorry, my main camera. So my main camera's gone, right? And I want to add some folders. So let's prepare. So I'm going to say a models folder. I want to have a materials folder. Let's do this together. Materials. And I really invite you guys to do this on a regular basis, because as was shown in it was like a tight little thing. Some people didn't have a chance to finish it. Some people did well. Some people didn't do well at all. Well, the stuff I looked at, right? Materials, models, textures. Let's go prefabs for now. And we'll also do a scenes with an underscore. Again, I use scenes, the underscore in front of the scenes folder, in order for us to get to it really quickly. And the same thing with scripts, because we're going to get to that as well. Okay, so we got some stuff. Let's save our first scene. So I'm going to say File, Save Scene, and I'm going to prepare that in the Scenes folder. So here's I am in the Scenes folder, and we're just going to make this scene, we're going to call it Main. All right, cool, cool. So we got our main scene, we've saved everything, we've got a container for pretty much everything. Let's go into the Models folder here and drag and drop everything. Okay, so last we did this again with Blender. So let's go back to Blender, and we're going to do some stuff there as we're doing this. Okay, so let's open up Blender. Everyone have Blender? Peter, you have Blender? Okay, so let's go pull up Blender. And again, I'm at 2.76. Your Blender may be a different version. It doesn't matter. It's pretty much the same. So one thing I want to do in Blender is let's get rid of the cube that's in the middle here. So the default cube, we're going to get rid of it with the, what's the button we use? X key. X key. If we go X, it deletes it, and we kind of travel around here. There's a couple of things we got in our scene still that's here. We got our camera and we've got our light. We want to keep these things, but we want to put them away so we don't see them. And the way to do that, of course, is to hide our camera on the right here where the inspector is, or sorry, the hierarchy. This is like a hierarchy. It's an outliner, actually, is what it's called. So here it is on the right side of Blender over here. I want to hide everything by pressing these two buttons. These two eyes will hide our objects. They'll be in the scene, but we won't see them. So this by pressing these eye buttons here. Okay, cool. Let's add a plane to the scene, just like we did last time. But we're gonna do a couple things differently than last time, because what I want to do today, I want to focus on a couple things. We're gonna have some new terminology you're gonna need for your test. The little test is gonna come up for 3D, something that COMP301 guys will know, but we'll talk about it again. And I want to kind of do some UV unwrapping today. So I want to actually use texture maps, which we're going to talk about today, textures, and materials. We're going to talk about those, and we're going to do that in Blender, and then we're going to kind of bring those over into Unity and see how that works. Okay, so first things first, I need to add a plane. How do I add an item, any kind of mesh or model, you know, something to start with, a primitive? How do I do that in Blender? What's the shortcut key? Huh? Shift A. So I press Shift A, and it brings up this little context menu that says mesh, plane, cube, circle, whatever. I want to hit the plane, right? So there's my plane in the middle of the screen. This is what you should have too. All right, I want to prepare myself. I know I'm going to do exporting like we did last time. And remember, we had all these problems with exporting last time, right? Because of, you know, the type of model and, you know, the scale and all this kind of stuff. So what I want to do here is, we're in Blender, I want to change from Blender Render to Blender Game. That's the first thing I want to do. And then I want to hit the N key, N for Norman. And when we press N, we see this numeric transform that comes up here. It's kind of our little sidebar that comes up for, you know, that allows us to change things numerically, all right? And as we scroll down, if I scroll all the way almost down to the bottom, there is a section in the numeric side that says shading, okay? I want to change multi-texture shading to GLSL, right? This is the right kind of shading to match up for games, all right? GLSL type shading, okay? So from, again, I move from multi-texture to GLSL here under the shading when I press the N key. Okay, first thing. Okay, let's get rid of that. So I'm going to move this away. And I want to move into the third tab to the right in the sidebar here in the inspector, which is the inspector in Unity, right? So the third tab in, so 1, 2, 3. And if you notice, if you scroll down, there's, or skim down, there's metric. I want to move from units that are none, that's Blender units, to metric. So I'm moving into meters, okay? So I've done all that. Now, let's look at our object. Remember that right now we are in object mode. And if I look through here, if I bring this part up here, notice on the left there is, it indicates in this view screen right here that we are in object mode. There are many modes, right? I can select the type of mode I can be in here to go to edit mode, or the shortcut key to go from object mode to edit mode is the tab key, which makes me, kind of puts me into edit mode. Edit mode allows me to mold my mesh, to change my mesh. Object mode allows me to manipulate my mesh and transform my mesh, but it won't allow me to necessarily model my mesh. We do all that in edit mode. All right, but for now, we don't have to do anything. What I want to do is I want to scale my plane up. And how do I scale my plane up with the shortcut key? What's the shortcut key to scale? S, the S key. So if I click the S key, I want to move up so that it covers up most of the grid there. And I want to move this back down so we can see it. There it is. And now numerically, if I press the N key, I can see that if I scroll up, I have my dimensions. So under transform, dimensions, which is how big the object is. I notice that my X and Y coordinates are 16.18 something. I want to change these to, by clicking on them, I want to change them to 16 meters. 16 meters, very important to do this, 16 meters by 16 meters. And then, in order for me to get meters, remember, I went into this third tab here to click metric. Otherwise, I won't get meters. Right? Remember, we're doing meters because when we bring things into Unity, Unity uses meters. Right? It doesn't use Blender units. It doesn't use centimeters or feet. Meters. Okay. So that's the first thing. So now I've kind of set up everything I need. The size of my object. This is our tile. You know, we're talking about tile maps in 2D. This will be the tile in 3D. All right. So that's the first thing you have to know. Okay, let's get rid of it with the N key. So our N key is gone, right? Now, again, if you want to scroll around, notice that my view, the way I've moved my view around in this perspective mode is my X axis is to the right, my red arrow. My Y axis is straight up and down there. And my Z axis is coming out of the normal, right? That's in the middle of the screen. Now, there's a few things we have to talk about in terms of terminology. We're going to get to those. All right. One of them is our material. What are materials again? Who remembers what materials are from the 3D days? Anybody? What's a material? How do you define a material? Nope. That's a texture. So what's a material? Yeah, it's a little different. It could hold physics, right? Think about what I just said. It could hold physics. A material is a container, the container that wraps your model, right? So it's like a skin. Think about it this way. So I'm going to model Pedro because Pedro's such a good-looking guy, right? I'm going to put him in here in 3D, and I'm going to make his model maybe with different parts. I'm going to have a head, a model for his head and his different body, whatever. But then I want to skin him. I want to put a skin on top of him. That's the first skin I'm going to put on top of him is a material that's going to be mesh, the mesh that I'm going to make for him, you know, as an example. And the material is going to hold a couple things. It's going to hold our properties for shading. It's going to hold our properties for the image that we're going to display on the material. We're going to display an image on top of the material. Now, by default, if I have my starting cube, which I got rid of, has a default material called material, right? Which we're going to change. We don't have that right now because we have a plane. So let's add a material. We can't do much with this thing until we add a material in there. So I'm going to go to the, you know, on the inspector on the right here again, this sidebar. And if you notice on the right, we're going to count from the right side now, the right tab, 1, 2, 3, 4 in from the right, this little circle, that's material, right? Notice that there's a couple things that it's targeting. One, it's targeting my primitive object that we have here, which is called a plane, all right? That's the target, right? Notice also that there's nothing that's inside this little window. Typically, you would have material, a default material that's here, right? What I want to do is I want to click the new button. So if I click the new button, it opens up a default material, and this is what it looks like, right? Now, right now it's called material, right? And I want to change this, right, from material to something like floor. Okay, so that's the floor material. All right, let's look at some options here that come along with this material, right? One is diffuse, right? There are a couple of channels here that this default material comes with. There's the diffuse channel, which is the color of our material, and right now it looks like a gray, right? There's also something called specular. Specular or specularity is the reflectivity of the material, right? The ability for it to absorb and reflect light, okay? Take a look. I want you to take this specularity and turn it right down to 0. So there's two ways to do this. You can actually type in here and type 0, right? Or you can go in the middle, hold down your mouse button and pull it to the left like a slider and make it go to 0. Take a look at the effect in the preview. Here's your preview. If I do that again, if I go to the left here and I slide all the way up, you notice how I get this shinier surface in the preview, right? So the more it goes up to 1, it's very, very shiny, like a metal object, and then all the way to the left here, it becomes matte, so no shininess at all, and opaque, right? I want to have it so that there's no shininess at all from the material. You can have both shine or reflectivity, specularity, from both the material and from the texture, right? So you don't want to have that. You want to kind of take it away. Okay, cool. So that's the first thing. And there's other properties that are built in. We're going to talk about this. One of them is something called backface culling. Okay, so who knows what backface culling is?
It doesn't have any visual elements when viewed from one of the sides that should be back.
The back. So if I rotate this thing like this, I look underneath it, you can see that there's no lighting. Even if I put an object down there, it appears to be black. That doesn't really matter if I put a light down there or not. In gameplay, only the normal, right? The normal is displayed. So take a look at this. The normal is the perpendicular to the normal in this particular case, because it's a plane, is the Z axis, right, which goes up in Blender, right? So this blue axis here in the manipulator arm represents kind of the direction of the normal. The direction of the normal is, if I have an object as an example, and this is its surface, it's 90-degree perpendicular to the surface is the normal. That's the direction of the normal. So right now the normal is coming up. Okay, so remember, you're going to be tested on this terminology. Normal, perpendicular to the object, it's pointing away from the object, right? Here's the back face underneath the object. So you notice that the Z is pointing away from it. So the back face is going to be culled or not, rendered when in gameplay, which means it's going to be invisible. We're going to have invisible pieces inside the game, and the reason for it is because who cares about what the object looks like from underneath? We don't care to render it, so therefore we're going to cull it, right? Not going to show it. So backface culling is by default, it's on. That's part of our game settings. We can also make this material invisible. We can also set it to text and so on. But right now, this is the one thing we've done. So we've got this material. It's, by default, we've called it the floor. Okay, cool. I want to add, right, a texture to the material. And a texture is an image, right? So when I say texture, it could be a bitmap, it could be a ping image, it could be a JPEG, it could be something, but it's usually represented as an image that I'm going to unwrap. I'm going to unwrap this texture and I'm going to paint it across the material, all right? And it's going to be evenly painted. You can choose different ways of unwrapping the texture, all right? Right now we have a very flat material, so we're going to unwrap it one way. It's going to be flat, right? Okay, so let's take a look at this. How do I do this? First, we have to go to the Texture tab, which is third from the right. So 1, 2, 3. And we're going to add a new texture. So we're going to click New. And right now, the texture has no name. We're going to leave it with no name for a second, right? This material. And we need to get a material. So let's go online and grab one. So I'm going to go kind of, new window. And I want to go to CG Textures. This is where I went last time, cgtextures.com. So join me here on cgtextures.com. And I want a floor-like material, right? Now you can choose other texture places as well. I've just chosen this one. I want a floor, but I want some kind of ground for my floor, right? So I'm going to choose ground. And what I want to choose is between gravel and ice. I want to choose gravel, not wood chips, that's for sure. And if you notice, there's different kinds of gravel. There's cobble, there's special, there's gravel, right? I want to choose cobble. All right, cool. Now, there's different kinds of, you notice, there's different kinds of cobble I can choose. I'm going to choose this one. So the one that's in the second row, kind of in the middle, right here. So this is kind of called, again, I'm going to just grab that so you can see. This is called gravel cobble, and it's 0017. That's what it's called. And if you notice the way I've done this, it's CG Textures, it's ground texture, it's a gravel, it's cobble, and it's a gravel cobble 0017. Now, there's different types of it. And if you notice, it's free. I only have 11 points left for my free credits. And after that, they're gone. I think they renew after a day or so. If you notice on the left here, you've got different options, right? I've got one that's 1024 by 1024, another one that's 1600 by 1080, 1066, and so on. Why would I want a larger texture, right, rather than a smaller one? I mean, it's, why would I care? Anybody have an idea? Better looking, but the other reason is because the larger the texture, the less it's going to tile, right? So if I want to use this over and over again across my, whatever I'm unwrapping it to, whatever my material is going to be that I'm going to apply it to, right? If I have a huge texture, a massive texture, right? It'll take a lot longer, a lot more for it to tile. So it'll be like more original, that kind of thing, right? Now at the same time, it takes up a lot more memory, right? So you've got to find that balance between how big the texture is, can't be that large, and as an example, and also what makes sense. So I'm going to grab this one here, this image 2, and I'm going to click download today, right? So I'm going to click this one. Now I've already done this just for the sake of time. So I've got this, and I've got it in a folder. By the way, I'm going to share it with you guys online here, but let's just go back here. So I've got it in something called FPS assets. It's got a little folder here that I'm using. And I've got these materials that I've got. So one of them is this gravel cobble 0017 that I'm telling you to download, right? Now, this cobble gravel 0017, I want to use in my scene, right? So let's go into Blender. And I want to apply it here. So I'm going to kind of click open in my texture. I'm going to click open when I downloaded it. You can download it on your desktop, but you have to navigate to it. So mine's under my desktop, FPS assets, Maze 2, and if you notice, there's gravel cobble 0017, right? So it's about 1.16 megs. Not that big, not that small. And I want to press open image. Okay, good. I've got my gravel cobble. Here it is for my floor. There it is, right? And I'm going to change this thing to, again, it's a texture, and I want to call it what it is. So I want to kind of double click here and name my texture gravel cobble, so I know what it is. Right, so gravel cobble, right? Hey, how come I'm not seeing it right here, right? Well, there's a couple things to note about Blender. One of them is, so one, we're in object mode, That's number one. So there's different modes. Object mode allows me to move my object around. Edit mode allows me to edit my object and model it, right? And then there's different shading modes. For now, right now, my viewport, as an example, my viewport shading is set to solid, right? I want to see material, right? If I go material, right, then I can actually see lighting, the effects of lighting, and my texture. But guess what? I don't see anything. How come? We need to unwrap it. That's why. We have our material, we have our texture, but we need to apply the texture to the material. All right, how do we do this? Go into tab, so in edit mode. So now everything is selected, right? And I want to press the U button. When I press the U button, it gives me a little menu that says, how do you want to do this? I want to unwrap. So I'm going to click unwrap. Now I get the texture. Here's what it looks like. But it's too big. They're massive. These like stones in real life. This is my floor, like 16 meters. These stones would be like almost 2 meters long, right? That's way too big, right? Yeah. Press the. I tabbed into edit mode, and then I pressed the U button, and then it'll give you a little menu that says unwrap. Okay, so this is where I'm at right now, right? Okay, this doesn't make any sense for me. What I want to do, right? What I want to do here, I'm just going to make these really small so you can see more of it. Here's my texture, right? I want to do a couple things. One is I want to make this smaller. I want to tile this a couple times too. So how do I do that? I have to go into a different view mode. So right now I'm in default. I want to change my views. I want to go into something called UV editing mode on the top. See? If you look at the top, there's two options. There's scene and default. I want to go to UV editing mode. There. Now, oh man, what happened to everything? Well, here's our view. It looks like it's solid again. Right? This is just I want to move from solid on the right to at least material. There it is, material. And on the left, I want to select on the bottom next to the UV menu, UV's menu, on the left. There's a little button to kind of select and click on the one we've already opened, which is Gravel Cobble 0017. Whoa, that's massive, right? And I'm going to pull out a little bit. Okay, so this is what the actual material looks like. It's been properly unraveled, right? So unwrapped, right? But I want to make it so that my object appears smaller. Well, here's a trick for you guys. One is this. I'm going to press the T button to take away this side here. Okay, and I'm going to press the, if you notice on the left here, I've got my object, and here is my UV. Whenever I move my mouse in Blender from the right to the left, I switch control. So here's split screen, right? On the right, this is my 3D rendering viewport. On the left, this is my UV map editor, right? If I go here with my mouse, I'm controlling the right screen. If I go here with my mouse, I'm controlling the left screen. So here, when I'm with this part of the mouse, let me just move these aside for a second. I want to press the S key to scale, but I'm not scaling my plane. I'm scaling my UV map. So I'm scaling my UV map. Watch what happens now. As I scale my UV map, the actual texture seems to be becoming smaller and smaller. Actually, what's happening is it's becoming tiled. I'm tiling my texture a little bit at a time until it becomes more reasonable, right? I'm just going to move this out too. So right now my scale is around 2.5 times. Let's take a look and see what it looks like. Is this reasonable? And if I was to just tab into, again, object mode, it's not bad. I mean, the scale is pretty good, about 2.5 times, as you can see. One thing is I want to make sure that my view is exactly like I see it on the screen, right? So this is what the actual texture would look like. Okay, this is cool. I'm happy with this size, right? And again, if I press, the only way I can do this, I press tab, I can see the size of my texture here on the left. I've really sized it up 2.5 times. On the right, I can see that it's scaled down, so it's not as big, right? Now, what I want to do is I want to go back to default mode. So I'm going to go back to default mode and check out the effect. So this is the effect of default mode. Okay, cool. This is kind of flat though, right? It's really kind of flat. And in order for us to make it look a little better, what we need to do is if we scroll all the way down here, right? Notice that there is inside the texture, we're on the texture tab still. We're scrolling down until we see influence. There's an influence area, right? Or section. Notice that color is the influence that we have right now. And color means how transparent or opaque it is and how the background material comes through. Right now, my texture in front is 100% opaque, so the color is perfectly 100%. You can't see anything behind. You can't see the material that's behind it, the default gray material. You don't see it. You just see my texture. On the right, there's a couple of extra things. One is geometry. I want to see what it would look like with a normal map. So let's do that. So let's click normal under geometry. Right away, you get this look. It actually looks like it's real rock, right? Except if I zoom in here, it's a little bit too much. Why? How does it get this normal? This is called a normal map. What it does is it takes the black and white sections of your texture and tries to interpolate what the normal would be. What if it was more of a material? This is great, but there's so much black and white areas here that it's becoming very grainy. Why? Because our normal is at 100% or 1. Let's tune down our normal to about 0.15 to see the difference. So I've already tested this value out in the first class. I'm going to go 0.15. I'm just going to type this into geometry. And now you see that the normal is a little bit better. This is something I can probably deal with, this kind of level of scratchiness. Some people may want to even go a little bit less than this. Okay, that's one. So my normal. The other one is my specularity. And I'll show you what I'm talking about with that. See, I've got my normal. I'm going to bring back my light for a second. Let's bring back my light. So here's my lamp, right? And I'm just going to go back into object mode. And if I bring my lamp around, you can see that depending on where I pull my lamp around, here's my lamp. Here's my lamp. Take a look. As I move my lamp around, I don't see any kind of, reflectivity from the faces of these rocks, which wouldn't be realistic, right? You'd have a little bit, right? Not a lot. So how do I add that? Well, again, I would click on my object, and now I'm going back down to this area that says influence, and I want to click intensity under specular. This adds a little bit of reflectivity. This is too much. This is 100%. Take a look how it looks very plastic-like, right? The more reflectivity, right, as an example, the less believable it's going to be, right? And I'm just going to focus on my lamp for a second so you can see what I'm talking about. Well, look how as I move my lamp around, how plasticky it looks, right? So it's too much. So what I want to do is I want to turn this down by right-clicking on my object here, and I want to go down to my influence and move my specular down to about 0.3. So 0.3. When I do that, it turns down, but there is a little bit of give. And if I go right into it now, this is what it's going to look like, you see? So it's not bad. And as I get my lamp going on, here's my lamp, and if I bring it close to my surfaces, right, you lamp closer, you're going to get more and more reflectivity, right? So it looks a little bit more realistic now than what we had before. Okay. Let me hide the lamp again by clicking the eye, and I'm going to move out again. Okay, so good. So here I am, and I've got I'm pretty happy with this, right? That I'm seeing right now. I've got this thing right now, this map that looks like a plane, and I'm pretty good. I'm happy with how it looks. Okay, now we're going to get into the more interesting part. I want to build a maze out of this flat plane, right? So how do I do that? Remember last week what we did? We have to cut this plane up into different pieces. And once we cut it up, we can use our editing controls in our editor to pull out different pieces of the plane to make them look like walls. Okay. Now remember, all we have here is one floor, right? That's a material called floor, and one texture that's called gravel cobble, right? That we've kind of loaded in. All right. Now sometimes this is pretty busy to work with, right? So I'd like to try and reduce this by changing it back to solid mode. Here's solid mode, okay? And some people actually like to work with wireframe solid shading at the same time, but this is fine for me. Okay, I want to go into edit mode, and I'm going to do that by pressing the tab key. So I'm going to tab key. If you notice, when I go into tab key in my edit mode, everything is selected, all right, automatically. The orange tells you that everything is selected. To deselect everything, I want to press the A key, right? That's how you kind of select these. So let's select everything again by pressing the A key again. So everything is selected. And on the left, notice on the left, I have different options here. One of them that I want to click is subdivide, which is underneath the add. So I want to add some subdivisions. On the left, it says how many cuts do I want to make? I want to put 10 cuts. So let's put 10 cuts in my subdivision. Right, now you can't see it so easily from here, but you can see that there's 10 cuts, or 11, it's a grid of 11 by 11 blocks, approximately, okay? There it is. Okay, so I've got 11 cuts. Now this is a good spot to deselect all by pressing the A key. Now if you notice, there's some divisions, almost looks like a grid. Okay, here's what I want to only select faces. Okay, so Doug, how do I automatically select, face? How do I go face select mode? How do I do that? Control tab, right? Gives me this little menu that tells me how do I want to select. Vertex select, edge select, or face select mode. I want to use face select mode here. What it does, face select mode puts these little dots in the middle of all the faces. So it allows me to identify that these are faces that I'm looking at, not edges or vertices. Okay, cool. I'm in edit mode. I'm editing and again, I got there by pressing the tab key, and now I've pressed control tab to bring up this selection mode. Okay, cool. What I want to do is I want 2 squares to represent the path of my player. So I don't want anything that's on the screen to be less than 2 squares wide in terms of my corridor. If it's less than 2 squares wide, I found last time when I was doing this that it was a little bit too cramped. I think 2 squares, again, it represents each square is approximately 2 meters. It's probably about 4 meters, there about 3 to 4 meters. It's probably good enough for my player to walk around it. All right? Let's check this out. So how do I do this? I want to right-click to select the square, like this. So I've right-clicked to select my first square. Now I want to shift right-click, right, to kind of start creating my room. So here's my room, right? And I want to create an opening that's about 2 squares wide here. So I want to kind of do one of these, right? There's my first room, right? You can see the room shape that I've got going on here. Let's make another room over here on this side. So again, I'm kind of doing one of these, right, nice and leisurely. And now there's different ways of doing this. I could block it off. So I could do one of these so I can make it so that the room is smaller and it has a bit of a block there. That's okay, if you notice how that's working. I want 2 squares up here, just like I'm mapping a dungeon. This is what I'm trying to do. I want to kind of map this up. And I keep on pressing the shift right click in order for me to do this. So I kind of make this centralized, and I did it a little differently in the morning, kind of a centralized piece that the character has to walk around. So kind of a larger area of squares, right? So I can walk in this way or that way. I want to get to the end over here. This is where I want the player to be. And if you notice, there's 2 squares, and then it's going to be this ending area. So I kind of want to make either an ending here in the corner, or I want to leave it so that it's over here. So let's make it like this. So kind of add a block for now, right? So again, making corridors, right? I could also make a corridor on this side if I want to. So if I wanted to kind of solidify this area, I could make it so that it looks like this, right? Got to be careful though. Sometimes 2 or 3 is okay, but nothing less than 2. On the right over here, and again, this is just my standards. You could choose your own. I'm kind of going to make a block over here, right? And I'm going to kind of also add in a little corner on this side as well. Okay, now you might think this is kind of nothing, right? But this is our first beginnings of our maze that we're going to make. We're going to make a maze. What I want to do in the future sessions like tomorrow is I want to make this procedurally generated, which means I'm going to use some code, and it's going to generate pieces of the maze in different positions randomly to make a randomly random three-dimensional maze, right? Okay, cool. So this is our maze. If I want to add other things, like for example, maybe I want to add like a little block here. Would it be 2 here? Yes. Would it be 2 here? Yes. And it probably can, if I added a block in there, right? Or I can also take away things, and I don't have to use blocks, by the way. I can, I can be really creative here, and I can make other shapes, right? For now, this is the easiest way to do it, so that's what we're going to do. I'm going to press the E key, E as in Edward, and what it's going to do is it's going to allow me to extrude the maze up like this. I want to move this up on the left. If you notice on the left, there's on the bottom left-hand corner, you can actually see a running total. That's right here, guys. On the left of the screen, right here, there's actually a depth value that you can see. I can't point it out on the screen as I'm using my mouse. Right here, take a look. Right, this depth value, I want to move to at least 3 meters. So I want to move this up to 3 meters if I can. And if I'm not accurate, I'm going to left-click to stop the extraction here, the extruding. And this is what my maze is going to look like right now. Okay, cool. If I want to be accurate, let's not click away from this, I want to keep these selected, these areas here. This is the roof section, right? I want to click the N key, it's numeric transform, and if I scroll all the way to the top, you notice that I have a medium, a transform median, and it's showing local with centimeters. I don't want that, I want global. And if you notice now, it says my Z index, my Z median is 3.01966 something. I want to make this 3 meters by typing 3M. That it makes the level, the height of my walls exactly 3 meters, which is what I wanted. Okay, that's what it looks like right now. Okay, we got our maze, right? Let's change its view. So I'm going to go from in here. Right now we're looking at it as solid. I want to move from solid mode into material mode to see what it looks like. Okay, so we see a couple things. There's a couple of issues. Take a look at the walls. The walls are messed, right? Walls are really messed up, right? The top of the maze looks pretty good because it looks like the bottom of the maze, but the walls look like they've been stretched. That's not right, right? That doesn't make any sense, right? But this piece is good. This is kind of our beginning of the maze. And if you notice, like, this is where the character is going to kind of wander through. And again, remember, this is just a tile that I'm going to change around randomly in different directions, different rotations, right, until it looks perfect, right? And 16 by 16, so I know it's 16 by 16. I'm going to layer it with a nice for loop, and boom, 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 tiles in different directions, right, from the main tile, which is going to start at the origin, right? I know it's crazy, but that's what the plan is anyway. All right, and as I zoom in here, if you notice, I still get the same thing, but this is wrong. This is wrong, which means I need another texture. Not only do I need another texture, I need another material to apply to this, because I can't apply different textures, right, to the same material. It'll absorb, every material holds its own container. So I need to go back here, right? And first of all, let me just deselect all. So I'll press A for deselect all. Notice that I've got some material, right? But what I want to do is I want to go back into solid mode for now. So I'm going to go back into solid mode. So here's my solid mode. And I want to select the area of the walls. So take the area. I'm going to start selecting these wall areas. So shift right click all the way around the walls, right? Until I've selected all the walls. So go ahead and do that, and I'll do the same thing. And if you notice, I want to select all the walls, and as I'm selecting the walls, make sure that you're selecting them all. Shift right click, so you don't deselect anything. It's a bit of tedium, right, to get this done. There's other fast ways to do this, but this is the nice thing for beginners. Move that there. Shift right click. Nice and slow. So what I'm doing is, again, I'm just creating my level. Yeah, there it is. And yeah. And the same thing goes with the other walls. Now all I want is my walls. And we're going to do this a couple of times, by the way. You're going to see why in the second half. Okay, so we're going to get this, and then we're going to go here and grab those walls. All I'm doing is selecting the walls around each of my objects here that I've created. It looks like they're different objects, but actually it's one big object. It's one thing that looks like a plane. That's what it is. And all I've done was extruded these blocks to make them look like they're walls. But actually they're not. Just pieces of the plane that I've extruded outwards. Okay, it looks like I've selected all of it, right? Let me move back to my optimum view so you guys see what I see. All right, now that I've selected this, what I want to do is I want to go to the right here, and there's my tabs. I want to click the material tab again, which is the fourth one from the right. So I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, counting to the right. So this is my materials tab. Notice how it's showing the cobblestone look. Okay, this is good because this is all one material. I want to do something else. I want to add a new material by clicking the plus button here in the materials tab, right? So I'm going to click the plus button, which adds a new material, right? It's unnamed. I want to double click and click new, and it's going to add a new material, which I'm going to double click and rename. I'm going to call this thing walls. Right, so the walls, like my floor, my walls. And this is a perfect time before I do anything else, right, to click Assign. Now that everything's highlighted, click Assign. Okay, good. I've assigned the material to everything else, the default material. I want to change my specularity again down here. It's right now it's specular. It's very specular. I want to change down to matte. So bring that all down to 0. Okay, so I've got this material called walls, and while I have the material wall selected, I want to go to my texture. Notice that I don't have a texture for this material, and I can have multiple textures in the material that overlap to give me special effects. Right now, I only need one texture, so I'm going to create a new texture. I don't know what the name is going to be yet because I need a new object. Let's go back to the web to find another texture. All right, so not that one. All right, so here I am on the web again. I'm back to cgtextures.com, and I'm going to kind of come back out to textures. And I want to find a type of brick, so I'm going to click brick. There it is. And under brick, there's medieval brick. I like medieval brick because we're going to make a dungeon, right? There's medieval brick. And under medieval brick, there's something called bricks. It's also Japanese walls and all this other stuff, really cool things. But I want to click bricks, the second one, in. And under bricks, you notice there's all kinds of different ones, different patterns and everything else. I want to click one that looks kind of like this one. So this is the one. This is kind of like 1, 2, 3, 4 rows down by 1, 2 across. This one. All right. And if you notice, there's different ones here again, right? There's something called brick old rounded. That's what I'm getting to. Brick old rounded 87, 0087. This is the texture. And again, I'm going to download the biggest object I can, which is going to be this 1600 by 1168 texture that looks like this. Okay, this kind of brick old rounded. You can download whatever one you want. Okay, I'm going to grab this one. Okay, I've already done that, of course, and I have them here in the FPS assets folder under brick old rounded 87. Right. So let me add that into my scene by going back to Blender. Right, back to Blender, and now I'm going to click Open on the right-hand side here. So here's under my texture. I'm going to click Open, and I'm going to select under Desktop where I have my stuff. I have something called FPS Assets into Maze 2, and I have Brick Old Rounded 0087. I'm going to click Open Image. When I do that, I've got my image for my brick, and I might as well call this the proper way. My texture shouldn't just be called texture. I double click here. I'm going to brick old rounded. And the reason for that is because I want to make sure that the texture maps or matches the name of my file as much as possible. A couple more things I got to do here, guys, to make this work properly. I got to do this to both textures, by the way. Okay, so one is, if you notice on the bottom here where it says source, I need to click this little button here that's going to add my texture to my blend file right here. This little blend, and I'm do the same thing to the other texture. Now, in order for me to get to the other texture, I've got to traverse back to the materials, click on the floor, right? Go back to the texture, right? And then go scroll down until I see this little button again under source to click it so I get my texture ingrained or embedded, all right? Now, you might see that this may not have the effect that you want. Okay, let's show what I've got here. I want to see my my new texture for my walls, so I want to go back to material to see them. Oh man, what's going on? How come it looks like this? Well, because we haven't unwrapped the textures. We need to unwrap all the textures for this one again. So I'm going to move to from here. I'm going to go from my first one, take my N key away. I'm going to go to here. I'm going to choose UV editing. And under here now I got these weird ass textures. Take a look at these. With the effects I have over here. Wow. How do I get rid of my textures? I need to reset them. So on the right side, when my mouse is on the right side, right, remember I control the right screen. On the left side, I control my left screen. On the right side, I want to press the U key, again, unwrap, but I want to click reset on the bottom of this menu, which resets my textures back to normal. But take a look what I get here. I get my textures, right, which is cool, but they're all exactly the same if I left it this way. And I wouldn't want to leave it this way. So I want to unwrap them. So I want to click unwrap again. And let's just choose unwrap to see what we get. Okay, well, this is what I get when I click Unwrap, which is kind of weird. Right? I get these patterns in circles, which is kind of bad. All right, let's try that again. So I'm going to unwrap, and I'm going to reset. I'm going to unwrap again, U, and let's try Smart UV on project. Let's project. Let's see what that does. And leave everything as is and press OK. Well, I get some of these, which is kind of cool. First of all, I got the wrong texture up here. Let's move that texture from gravel cobble to brick old rounded. This is what it looks like right now. This is cool. But if you notice, as I scroll in, my objects, all of my objects are in different rotations. So some of them are rotated up and down, some of them are rotated left and right. It's a problem, right? How do I normalize these, right? Okay, so let's do that again. So I'm going to kind of unclick and go reset, and then click the U button, and let's see some other objects here. There's also a cube projection, which I don't want to do, a cylinder projection, a sphere projection. How about project from view bounds? Let's try that. Well, that's kind of bad too, because it tries to lay it out in this three-dimensional mode. Take a look. It almost looks three-dimensional here in this texture. So that's not really right. So unwrap. Unwrap, reset. Unwrap. Okay, how about unwrap, project from view? Same thing. It'll give you some weird three-dimensional mode. I just want to show you them so you know what they are, right? How about follow active quads? Well, there's no active quad, so that wouldn't work. How about light map pack? I press light map pack and press OK, and now I get this really weird. They're all squares, but at least they're even. Okay, this is cool. I can almost live with this, right? Here's one thing I do want to do. I want to resize these squares. I'm going to press the S key and resize them so that they're much, much bigger. Like we're talking much, much bigger. But let me just undo that for a second. Let's press the A key to select all of them. That's the key. Press the A key, select all on this side, on the left side. And then press the S key to scale outwards. So you see now you've got kind of these textures that kind of overlap, but we've got a bit of a problem. And if you notice, each one of them is a little bit individual. So it kind of gives you this really weird, like, they're all wrapped differently. So if you notice on the preview on the right here, right, it's not the right thing, right? So how do I do this so I'm not like messed up? How do I do that so, you know, I want to do the right textures? The right thing to do is deselect all on the right. So deselect all. Start selecting a couple of areas first as tester areas. So I'm going to select right click. Oops. How about you select the right things, like the wall, these walls. And you know why I'm getting that? Because I'm not 100% solid, right? Because by default, the options on the right allow you to see through, right? So I don't want them to see through. I want to basically see it so that it's solid, right? There we go. So here's an example of a texture that I want to unwrap. It's a wall, right? And if you notice here, I want to do this whole section of wall. So this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. And what I want to do is press U for unwrap, reset. I want to reset the textures, and then U, and then unwrap. Now what it does is what I want. It gives me this nice texture for the whole wall, right, as one. Right, now look what I get here. If I look on the right, it's not bad, eh? Look at what I'm getting. I'm getting a pretty decent wall that's original, right? That like kind of flows from one side to the other. Okay, let's do the same thing with these ones. So now this takes a little bit longer to make. And I'm going to kind of do the same thing. So I'm going to kind of click these two, right? If you notice, they're right there. And press U for reset. It's going to take a while, right? And I'm going to press U for unwrap and unwrap. There we go. Same thing. And if you notice there, these ones are unwrapped properly now, right? Hey, how come I can't see these ones? How come? If I go in here, though, and I look around, I get a weird effect. Why? Because the normals are all messed up here, right? I didn't specify how to extrude these things. So on the outside, if I go to, you know, these look like, these two sections here look like they're black, right? Now, there's a couple reasons why. One is the lighting. I only have one light, right? I don't don't have too many more lights. That's why this looks pretty black down here. But you'll see as we get back there, it won't be like that. Okay, let's do the rest. So I'm going to do this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. So this whole section of wall. And I'm going to go U for unwrap, reset, and then U again, and then unwrap. So again, I can do kind of sections of wall at a time that make it look realistic. Same thing with these ones. And I'll let you do the rest as I do mine. So that's my first section of wall, reset, unwrap, unwrap. Right? Okay, so cool. I've kind of got that done, right? I'm going to do the rest for the other ones. I'm going to kind of do the same things because these walls look all messed up, right? So I'm going to kind of do one of these. So let's do 1, 2, 3. You can actually be really creative here, and I'll show you what I'm saying. I'm going to do these ones, and I can do these ones, right? So those bunch. And UV unwrap, right? As it unwraps. I could also probably have done that one too, right? But that's okay. I just do it on its own. So UV unwrap, unwrap, right? There we go. So kind of a, you know, a sexier part of the wall. This one as an example. And this one looks pretty good this side. So I'm not going to touch that one. But these two for sure, they need to be unwrapped, right? And the same thing goes with these side. This side I'm going to definitely play with. And I'm not going to do them all, by the way, guys. But as you can see, this is the tedium that this is part of us being a graphic artist, you know, that many of us aren't, right? And same thing goes over here. So just grab all those, unwrap, unwrap. And this one, unwrap, unwrap. And these ones are already done already, but these other ones are not. So these ones here, these two, unwrap, unwrap. And this big section of wall, we got to be careful, but who cares on the outside? Kind of grab, oops, kind of grab all these, right? Unwrap, unwrap. And same thing goes over here. Unwrap, unwrap. And the reason why is because what we have, and can grab all these ones here. And these ones are already done. So this one, these ones here, I can tell. Unwrap, unwrap. Once I see that they're big like that, unwrap, unwrap, until I get most of them. Is it going to be perfect? Absolutely not. I'm doing this like lickety split, right? So, you know, I'm not taking my time here. But what I want you to do is think about the work that's involved here, right, with some of this stuff, because this is the stuff that, you know, young artists do. Oops, that's not one. Unwrap, unwrap, and then do this one. Unwrap, unwrap. There we go. And then we'll do all these. For a very high level, unwrap, unwrap. And these ones, 1, 2, 3, unwrap, unwrap. As you can see, we're getting there. But definitely not done. And the way to check that is, of course, if you see some of these bigger ones, these are okay. Once I start getting to these smaller blocks that I've set up, I know that they're wrong. So unwrap, unwrap. And these ones here are very small. One small, one big. So that one's kind of a smaller one. Unwrap, unwrap. These are bigger ones. These are bigger ones. These are bigger ones, but kind of a different size. That's good. I'm almost done, I think. How are you guys doing with this little exercise? Now again, what I'm demonstrating here is the ability for us to UV unwrap certain surfaces. Now they're not going to be completely even. Oh, these aren't done. So unwrap, unwrap, and these aren't done here. So these whole surfaces here. So unwrap, unwrap. But the great thing is once we've got this done, for the most part, we're going to have a surface that we're going to be pretty proud of in terms of how it's going to look, right? All right, and I think I take care of most of it. And you know what? I'm going to miss something for sure because, you know, I'm doing it really. Oh, there's one. I've missed these two. Unwrap, unwrap. You guys got them all? Maybe you have. That's one I missed. Unwrap, unwrap. It means I missed all these. So that one's there. And how about this on this side? Okay, I think I got all of them, but it was hard to tell. Okay, so I've got all this stuff done. So all of them are pretty much done. Let's move back into default view. Here we are. Here's default view, and this is what they look like. Now some of them are good, but remember they look very flat. And the way to do that is I got to go back down here into where I have my shading and my geometry. I want to choose my geometry again. Remember when my geometry was 0.15, which kind of worked out for my other rocks. This will work like nicely here. Maybe I have to even go lower here, but let's leave it at 0.15 for now. And let's change our specular to 0.3, so kind of not too shiny, right? And we have our maps for everything, right? As a full level. This is a great place to save, and we're going to upload everything to up on GitHub, so you guys have what I have, right? And I'm just going to do that by clicking on the file. I'm going to save my Blender file. I'm going to save this one on my desktop, right? There we go. Click desktop, and I'm going to save this thing as maze.blend. So maze. I'll call it maze2.blend. Maze2.blend, and I'll go into. Actually, I have my FPS assets, and I'll go into maze2, and I'll just call it maze2.blend. So I know what it is. It's for you guys. You guys are the other section. Okay, so cool. I've saved my blend file. I've got everything going. This is a great place for us to stop. So I'm going to stop recording now. We'll take a 5 or 10 minute break, come back, and we'll finish off with the rest of the piece. How do I bring all this in? What's the proper way to bring all this in into Unity? And we'll talk about positives and negatives about doing this. All right, so we'll come back in a few minutes. So let's go back to the recording, which is here, and